In this video, we are going to be simplifying expressions using exponent rules. Now these are the 8 exponent rules, and if you need to refresh on these, I have a video on that in the description. But before we get any further, please check out the description as I have some products that make studying easier for me, as well as the current book I am reading. So let's go ahead and solve for these. So with the first one, we are going to be using the quotient rule as well as the negative exponent rule in order to solve for these. We may be using the product rule as well, and I do not have that one listed. But the first thing we can do is move our 3 value to the front of this expression because there is no exponent in it and it is simplified already. Now using the quotient rule, we can rewrite this as x to the power of negative 2 minus 4. And if we simplify that value, we would have 3 times x to the power of negative 6. Now this is where using our negative exponent rule comes in, because simplifying this expression, we do not want any negative exponents. So we would move x to the power of negative 6 to the denominator. So our final answer would be 3 over x to the 6th. Now let's solve the other one. We can move our 4 value out to the front again, and we would have y cubed over y to the power of negative 5. Using the quotient rule, we would have y to the power of 3 minus a negative 5. If we simplify that, we would have 4 times y to the power of 8. Now both of these can be solved another way, and a quicker way, by using the negative exponent rule right away. And if we did that, for the first one, our 3 times x to the power of negative 2 over x to the 4th, we can move that x to the power of negative 2 to the denominator right away. So we'd have 3 over x to the 4th times x squared, and using the product rule, we would end up with 3 over x to the 6th. Now similarly, with our other expression, we can move y to the power of negative 5 to the numerator, which would turn negative 5 positive, which means we would have 4 times y cubed times y to the 5th, which would equal 4 times y to the 8th. Let's move on to another example. So in this one, we have y cubed times z to the 5th over 7 times z to the negative 2 times y to the 7th. In order to solve this one, we want to get both y and z in either the same numerator or denominator. So what we're going to do is we're going to move y cubed to the denominator, and then we're going to move z to the power of negative 2 to the numerator. Once we have done both of those steps, we would have z to the power of 5 times z squared over 7 times y to the power of 7 times y to the negative 3. And using the product rule, we would combine these exponents because both our z's and y's now have the same bases. So we'd have z to the power of 7 over 7 times y to the 4th. Let's go through one more example that will be a little harder. So in this one, we have 25 times x to the 4th times y to the negative 5th over x to the power of negative 6 times y cubed. And that whole expression is to the power of 3 over 2. So how we're going to do this is we're first going to solve for our x's and our y's on the inside. We want them to either be on the denominator or the numerator together. So we're going to swap those, right? So we have x to the 4th times x to the 6th in the numerator, and then we move our y to the 5th downstairs. So we have y to the 3rd times y to the 5th. Now combining our x's and our y's with our exponents, we have 25 times x to the 10th over y to the 8th. And that whole thing is to the power of 3 over 2. Now we can apply 2 exponent rules to this equation. Our product rule as well as our quotient rule. So if we applied both of those, we can apply 3 over 2 to 25. So we have 25 to the power of 3 over 2 times x to the 10th to the power of 3 over 2, and our denominator will also be to the power of 3 over 2. So y to the 8th to the power of 3 over 2. Now, using our powers rule, we can multiply our exponents. So we can multiply 10 times 3 over 2 and 8 times 3 over 2. And if we simplified that, we would have 25 to the power of 3 over 2 times x to the 15th over y to the 15th. Now we need to simplify 25 to the power of 3 over 2. There's two ways you could do this. Right away you could recognize that 25 can be rewritten as 5 squared. And if you wrote it like that, you would multiply 2 times 3 over 2, which would be equal to 5 cubed, which is equal to 125. But if you didn't recognize that, you can solve this another way. We can break out the exponent 3 over 2 as 1/2 times 3. And now using the exponent rule, we can pull that 3 out, and we would have 25 to the power of 1/2, and that whole expression is cubed. And you should know that if anything is to the power of 1/2, that is taking the square root of it. And the square root of 25 is 5. So we would have 5 cubed, which is equal to 125. So our final answer would be 125 times x to the 15th over y to the 12th. So just as a review, these are the 8 exponent rules that we touched on, most of them, but not all of them. But to our right, we have the 4 expressions we simplified for. So thank you for watching this video.